The conference room fell completely silent when the Korean CEO grabbed the black woman's hand and declared she was his girlfriend, all to hurt the ex-fiancée who shattered his heart 2 years earlier. But when that same woman delivered a presentation in perfect Korean to a boardroom full of skeptics, jaws dropped, and the secret he revealed to her later that evening would change both their lives forever. Amara had dreamed of visiting South Korea since she was 13 years old. It wasn't just about the stunning architecture or the dramas she binge-watched every weekend. It was about discovering a place where her spirit felt at home, a culture that somehow resonated with something deep inside her that she couldn't explain. Her apartment walls weren't just decorated with K-drama posters and concert photos. They were a map to a destiny she could barely admit she believed in. Every single day before heading to her marketing job, she would practice Korean phrases she'd written on sticky notes plastered around her bathroom mirror, certain that one day these words would open doors she'd only dared to dream about. Her friends called it borderline obsession. She called it preparation. When a recruitment post popped up on LinkedIn seeking international marketing specialists to work in Seoul, she clicked apply before she could second-guess herself. It seemed absurd, honestly, like throwing a wish into the universe. But 6 weeks later, while curled up on her couch watching her favorite drama and eating takeout, an email notification lit up her phone that made her drop her chopsticks. Congratulations, you've been selected for MKG Seoul. Flight and accommodation provided. She screamed so loud her neighbor knocked on the wall. She laughed. She cried. She couldn't believe it was actually happening. 10 days later, Amara walked through the arrivals gate at Incheon Airport, taking in absolutely everything. Heart racing, wrapped in her warmest jacket, because she'd heard Korean winters were brutal. Her apartment in Gangnam was tiny but perfect. The Ondal heating system felt like pure luxury. She breathed it all in. The cold air, the neon signs flickering everywhere, the smell of freshly baked pastries from a nearby cafe. The next day, she put on her most professional blazer, checked her reflection a dozen times, and rehearsed her Korean greeting one more time. She'd practiced until her tongue hurt. Walking into the modern glass tower of Myeong Corporation, she noticed the atmosphere shift. Heads turned. Whispers started. Not hostile, just curious. Was it her skin tone, her natural hair styled in twists, or just the fact that nobody expected to see a black woman walking into this particular building? She smiled anyway. This was her dream come true, and she wasn't about to shrink herself for anyone's comfort. A woman approached her, sleek ponytail, sharp blazer, professional smile. "Good morning. I'm Sora, executive assistant to CEO Kang. He wants to see you." Immediately, the CEO on her first day. Amara's stomach twisted. She adjusted her bag and followed. When the office door opened, she saw him. Stunning, almost unfairly handsome, sharp jawline, intense eyes. Amara's breath caught in her throat. This man looks like he stepped out of a magazine, she thought, then mentally slapped herself. "Focus, Amara. That's not what you're here for." "Have a seat," he said flatly. She sat down carefully. "I'm CEO Kang Minho. You'll work under my supervision. Sora will give you the details." Cold, direct, no warmth whatsoever. Yet somehow his eyes lingered on her just a fraction longer than necessary. She couldn't quite read it. The months passed quickly. Amara adapted fast, soaked up knowledge like crazy, and grew confident enough to pitch her own ideas during meetings. Her colleagues warmed up to her. Some even helped her practice casual Korean slang. When they organized a small welcome party for her, Amara laughed until her sides hurt, momentarily forgetting she was thousands of miles from home. CEO Kang never attended. He never joined those kinds of gatherings. He was perfect, controlled, distant, until the day everything changed. It happened 9 months in. She walked in like she owned the place. Wine-colored heels, porcelain skin, dripping confidence. Heads turned again, but this time it had nothing to do with Amara. "That's June," Minji whispered beside her, CEO Kang's ex-fiancée. She left him 2 years ago, broke his heart into pieces. Amara's eyes followed the woman who glided through the office like she still had claim to it. Her makeup was flawless. Her designer bag swung with every calculated step, and her gaze was locked directly on the CEO's glass office. She left him, Amara repeated quietly. Yes, they were supposed to get married, but she took a job offer in Paris instead. He hasn't been the same since. Just then, the glass door to CEO Kang's office swung open, and June disappeared inside. Amara couldn't stop staring. Why come back now? What could she possibly want? Her pulse quickened for reasons she couldn't explain. Maybe because she'd grown to admire CEO Kang, not just for his looks, but for his discipline, his quiet strength. The way he never spoke unnecessarily, but always said exactly what needed to be said. She couldn't explain what came over her. She grabbed a random file folder. Nothing important, just papers. Her legs just started moving on their own. And now here she was standing outside his door. She honestly hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the voices carried clearly enough. I'm telling you I regret it all, June said sharply. Are you seriously still punishing me for this? Silence stretched between them. You begged me to stay, CEO Kang finally replied. I asked you to marry me. You walked away like it meant nothing. And now I'm back, she shot back, almost defiant. I want us to fix this. Just then, the door cracked open slightly. Amara froze, but CEO Kang's voice called out, Come in. She stepped inside hesitantly, clutching the folder to her chest. You needed these documents, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. June spun around sharply, clearly annoyed by the interruption. You can leave now, she said coldly. Amara nodded, started to turn, but CEO Kang's voice stopped her. Stay. She blinked, slowly turned back around. Then, in one swift motion, like something had overtaken him completely, CEO Kang crossed the room, took her hand, and kissed her. It wasn't long, but it was intentional and impossible to misunderstand. Amara's lungs forgot how to work. June stood frozen in shock. Then, CEO Kang faced June, his tone calm but ice cold. She's my girlfriend now. June's face blazed with rage, but she said nothing. She just grabbed her bag and stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots. When the door closed, Amara stepped back. Why did you do that? She asked, her voice shaking. CEO Kang's expression hardened. You shouldn't involve yourself in things that aren't your business, he said coldly. You got what you wanted, and as for what just happened, nothing happened. Understood? His words were sharp, detached, brutal, like the whole thing was beneath his notice. Amara's eyes widened with shock and anger. Nothing happened. Was that really how he saw it? A meaningless action, a trivial move, dismissed like it carried zero weight. She felt rage bubbling up, and it showed in the tremor of her voice. Is this normal here? You kiss someone out of nowhere and then act like it meant nothing. She shot back, her chest heaving with emotion. Without waiting for his response, she turned sharply and stormed out of his office, her fury barely contained. As the door slammed behind her, CEO Kang sat completely still in his chair. His heart was pounding harder than he wanted to admit. He'd always stayed in control, always kept his composure. But that kiss, it shouldn't have mattered. It was just a kiss. But even as he told himself that, something inside him disagreed. The feeling of her lips on his lingered, a strange weight settling in his chest. He shook his head, trying to shake off the feeling. No, he couldn't let it affect him. It was nothing, just a kiss. From that moment on, things between them became tense. Amara refused to make eye contact, actively avoided his presence, and CEO Kang, he found himself noticing her constantly whenever they crossed paths. He tried to convince himself it was just leftover tension from the kiss, but somewhere deep down, he knew something fundamental had shifted. It wasn't just about the kiss anymore. What was it exactly? A few days later, Amara stayed late at the office, determined to finish a project with a tight deadline. The building felt eerily quiet. Everyone else had gone home. She let out a tired sigh as she stared at her screen, her eyes blurring from exhaustion. She didn't notice CEO Kang standing in the doorway, silently watching her. When she finally stood from her desk, muttering frustrations, under her breath, she froze completely. CEO Kang was standing there, his expression soft but intense, impossible to read. She quickly straightened, her voice wavering. CEO Kang, she acknowledged him, forcing a polite smile though the air felt suffocating. He walked into the office, his eyes still fixed on her. "Amara," he began, his voice surprisingly gentle. "I need to apologize for what I said and for what happened between us. It was wrong." The weight of his words hit her, and for the first time she saw something unfamiliar in his expression, genuine remorse. She blinked, trying to process his apology. It's okay," she said, her voice softer than she expected. "I just wasn't sure how to take it." CEO Kang nodded slowly. "I shouldn't have dismissed it like that. I should have treated you with more respect, and I'm sorry for making you feel small." There was a pause, a fragile silence hanging between them, but for the first time in days, Amara felt the tension ease. Just slightly, she gave a small nod. "It's okay," but even as she said those words, she knew it wasn't really okay. Something had fundamentally changed between them. What exactly? She couldn't name it, but it definitely wasn't okay. A few days later, CEO Kang received an invitation to the Business Leaders Summit, a prestigious event where the country's elite would gather. He was expected to bring a guest, and predictably, Jun sent him a message suggesting they attend together. In her text, she made it painfully clear she absolutely would not go with Amara, the black woman, dismissing her as completely irrelevant. CEO Kang didn't hesitate as he declined Jun's offer, not this time. Later that afternoon, he called Amara into his office. When she walked in, she wasn't sure what to expect. "Amara," CEO Kang began, his tone professional, yet with an unusual softness. "I have a proposal. I need a guest for the summit. If you're willing, I'd like you to accompany me." Amara raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" He looked at her, his gaze penetrating. "Because I need someone who can hold their ground. Someone who won't shrink under scrutiny. I'll pay you well." She paused, hesitation creeping in. The offer was tempting, a chance to meet some of South Korea's most powerful figures. And though she wasn't sure about the arrangement, she felt something stirring inside her. "Okay," she said, surprising herself. "I'll do it." The weekend came faster than Amara expected. She stood in front of her mirror, her reflection a stark contrast to the person she'd been just weeks ago. Tonight, she wasn't just Amara, the marketing specialist. Tonight, she was the woman accompanying CEO Kang, and she needed to look the part. She smoothed down the elegant navy dress, the fabric hugging her curves perfectly, the delicate heels clicking against the floor as she left her apartment, the weight of the evening pressing down on her. She hadn't fully processed what she was doing yet. Was this really happening? Was she actually going to the Business Leaders Summit as CEO Kang's date? Outside, a sleek black car waited at the curb. As she walked through her building's entrance, she saw him. CEO Kang standing beside the car, dressed perfectly in a dark, custom suit. His eyes lifted the moment he saw her. For a heartbeat, he said nothing, just stared. Then, softly, he whispered, "You look beautiful." Her heart stuttered. The statement was simple, but it held an unexpected warmth, something she hadn't expected from a man who'd been nothing but distant and guarded since their kiss. She blinked, caught off guard, then gave a slight nod. "Thank you." He offered his arm. Without hesitation, she slipped her hand through it. Linked arm in arm, they stepped into the night. When they arrived at the venue, they were greeted by a wave of camera flashes and hushed whispers of anticipation. The Business Leaders Summit was notorious for being one of the most exclusive events of the year, and tonight every eye was on CEO Kang. As he walked confidently through the entrance, Amara at his side. She felt the weight of countless stares on her, but this time it didn't make her want to disappear. Instead, she held her head high, refusing to let anyone see the anxiety churning in her stomach. As they entered the grand ballroom, she could hear the whispers following them. She wasn't surprised. Who was the black woman with CEO Kang? The questions were unspoken but palpable. She could feel their judgment, their curiosity. But as the evening wore on, she began to tune them out. She had something more important to focus on. The way CEO Kang's presence seemed to command the room. The way people leaned in when he spoke. And then there was how his eyes would occasionally drift to her, as if reminding himself she was there. She caught his gaze once, and he smiled genuinely. For the first time, he looked at her like she wasn't just his hired date for the night. His look triggered something deep within her. Was this real attraction, or was she just caught up in the moment? After several hours of mingling and polite conversation, CEO Kang was invited to the stage to give his speech. Amara stood to the side, her nerves rushing back to the surface. She didn't know why she was so nervous. This wasn't her event. But as CEO Kang delivered his remarks, she couldn't help but feel proud. There was something incredibly magnetic about him, so commanding. The moment he finished, his eyes immediately searched for hers in the crowd. She gave him a subtle, encouraging smile, and that was enough to draw him back to her side. That's when the storm hit. June, dressed in a sleek white gown, stepped forward from the crowd, her heels clicking loudly on the floor as she approached. "Well, well," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let's hear from CEO Kang's girlfriend too, shall we?" The room went completely silent. Amara's stomach twisted as June's words rang out, and for the first time that evening, she felt the weight of every single eye. In the room, the murmuring of the crowd grew louder, and she could almost feel the heat of their stares burning into her. CEO Kang's expression hardened instantly, his grip on her arm tightening, and he leaned in close. "June," he said through clenched teeth, barely holding back his anger. "Please, just stop." But June wasn't done. "I'm sure she'll embarrass herself just like everyone expects," she taunted, her smile wide and cruel. "What do you think, CEO? Do you really think you can present her well in front of all these people?" Amara felt the sting of June's words, but instead of backing down, she lifted her chin. She wasn't going to let June diminish her. This wasn't about June. This was about proving to herself that she belonged here. "I'll show you," Amara whispered under her breath. As she turned to walk toward the stage, CEO Kang instinctively reached out, grabbing her arm gently but firmly, his eyes searching hers, worry visible in them. "Amara, don't. You don't have to do this," he started, his voice low and urgent, clearly worried she might embarrass herself or get overwhelmed. But she gently pulled free from his grasp, her face calm but determined. "Yes, I do," she said. Before he could stop her again, she took a deep breath and walked toward the microphone. The entire ballroom held its breath. She could feel the tension building with every step she took. But then she did something unexpected. She began in Korean. Her voice was clear, steady, and it flowed smoothly through the room. "Good evening," she said in fluent Korean, her accent nearly perfect. She felt proud of herself. This was her moment to show she was more than just a pretty face. As she continued speaking about the purpose of the evening and the importance of their collective work, she noticed people were actually listening. She was no longer the outsider in the room. When she finished, the ballroom erupted in applause. People came up to congratulate her, praising her poise, her eloquence, her confidence. One man even said to CEO Kang, "You found something special. She's beautiful and brilliant." CEO Kang himself was stunned. He'd never expected this from her. He hadn't realized what she was capable of until tonight. Before he knew it, he'd pulled her into a tight embrace, unable to stop himself. The crowd, the pressure, everything seemed to fade away. The only thing that mattered in that moment was the woman in his arms. June, standing off to the side, looked absolutely furious, her eyes burning with jealousy as she watched them. She couldn't tear her gaze away as Amara smiled effortlessly and hugged CEO Kang back. But as they separated, Amara noticed something. The atmosphere between them had changed. And it wasn't just the crowd's reaction. It was him, CEO Kang. The way he looked at her now was different. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had just begun to shift between them. The summit had ended, but its effect lingered. Like perfume in the air, subtle, intoxicating, and impossible to ignore. The drive home was quiet. Amara sat next to CEO Kang in the back of the black car, the city lights dancing across her face. He hadn't said a word since she stepped down from that stage, since she silenced the entire room with her flawless Korean and elegant presence. But she could feel his gaze on her, curious, impressed, grateful. When they reached her building, he got out first and opened the door for her. "Amara," he said softly, almost like he was testing the weight of her name. She looked up at him, expecting another silence. Instead, he cleared his throat and continued. "You were incredible tonight." "Thank you," she replied, unsure what else to say. There was a strange tension between them, like something had cracked open, but neither of them dared to look inside just yet. He hesitated, glancing up at her building. "Would you maybe want to get a drink to celebrate?" Her eyebrows raised slightly. Was this the same man who barely acknowledged her at the office just weeks ago? Sure, she said, her voice quiet but steady. They ended up at a quiet rooftop bar, not far from her place. The city sprawled beneath them like a painting. CEO Kang loosened his tie, the top 2 buttons of his shirt undone. It was the most relaxed she'd ever seen him. I didn't think you'd actually go up there, he admitted after their drinks arrived. I know, she said, a slight smile tugging at her lips. That's exactly why I did. He chuckled. A real laugh this time, not forced, not formal. You like proving people wrong. Only the ones who underestimate me, she replied, taking a sip of her drink. There was a long pause. The breeze stirred her hair gently, and he leaned forward, his voice suddenly more sincere. I didn't mean to underestimate you, Amara. I didn't know you. She met his eyes. You still don't. His smile faded, replaced by a look of genuine consideration. I'd like to, he said quietly. Just as the moment deepened between them, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. The glow of Jun's name appeared on the screen. He declined the call, but Amara had seen it. You don't have to pretend for me, she said, standing, trying to hide the sudden chill in her chest. I know where I stand. Amara, wait. He stood too, his voice strained. She turned to face him. I wasn't supposed to matter. I get that. But tonight changed something, and I'm not sure you're ready for that. Then she left, her figure disappearing into the elevator light, leaving CEO Kang alone under the stars, with a silence much heavier than before. The aftermath of the summit lingered in the office like a whisper nobody dared say out loud. Amara walked through the hallways, chin up, earbuds in, acting unbothered, but she could still feel the stares, the questions, the assumptions. She gave a presentation in Korean. Did you see CEO Kang's hand on her back? Are they dating? Nobody had the courage to ask her directly, but she knew the gossip was spreading fast. Still, what surprised everyone most wasn't Amara. It was CEO Kang. He was noticeably withdrawn after the summit, more distant than usual, even toward Jun. Jun had left the ballroom that night without another word, her pride wounded, her ego crushed. She'd expected CEO Kang to clarify things, to distance himself from Amara publicly, but he didn't. Not at the summit, not the next day, not at all. Instead, he stayed silent, and that silence spoke volumes. Jun tried to confront him once in the parking garage, heels clicking as she matched his pace. Is this some kind of game? CEO Kang, she snapped. You bring her to the summit. You let her speak in front of everyone like she belongs. He turned to her, his face blank. Watch your words. She's not even. I never said she wasn't. Jin froze. The implication was clear. CEO Kang wasn't going to push Amara away, and that single choice was enough to make the entire office buzz with quiet speculation. Meanwhile, Amara kept her head down and focused on her work. She had no clue what was going on inside CEO Kang's mind. He hadn't really spoken to her since that night, and she wasn't brave enough to bring it up. She told herself it was for the best. What happened was just a one-time fantasy. A brief moment, nothing more, but her heart didn't buy it so easily. One morning as she stepped into the elevator, the doors began closing only to slide open again. CEO Kang. Their eyes met. He gave a slight nod. Morning? Morning, she replied softly, adjusting her bag. The space between them felt thick, awkward. Then he cleared his throat. About that night, she tensed. I just wanted to say you did incredibly well. That was it. No explanation, no deep conversation, just a simple compliment. And yet her heart refused to stay calm, pounding hard in her chest. As the elevator doors opened to their floor, he let her step out first. But as she walked past him, she could feel his eyes lingering on her just a little too long. Outside the office, the whispers continued. Some expected major drama. Others waited for a scandal to break online, but no scandal came. No official statement, no trending story. And that silence made the mystery even more intriguing. By the end of the week, Amara overheard someone whisper in the break room. If you ask me, the CEO has fallen for her. That's why he's staying quiet. He doesn't want to deny it. She pretended she didn't hear, but her chest ached with something she couldn't name. Not yet. Not until he said it himself. The vibe in the office had gradually shifted. People could sense it. CEO Kang, who once rarely left his glass office, now occasionally joined team lunches, lingered in meetings longer than necessary, and most surprisingly, showed up at company gatherings. Nobody said it aloud, but everyone exchanged knowing glances. Amara remained oblivious. She assumed maybe the company was implementing new policies, or perhaps CEO Kang had simply changed his routine. Either way, she didn't think too much about it. She had deadlines to meet, clients to manage, and a newfound confidence after the summit. What she didn't realize was that CEO Kang had changed because of her. He observed her from afar, the way she handled challenges with grace, the calmness in her tone when clients were frustrated, how she always had a creative solution to save a failing project. She'd become more than just impressive, she was unforgettable. One Friday evening, the team gathered at a rooftop restaurant for a celebration. A successful quarter had just wrapped, thanks in part to a campaign Amara had spearheaded. Laughter filled the night air, glasses clinked together, and everyone was slightly more relaxed than usual, including CEO Kang. He'd agreed to attend without hesitation. Nobody questioned it. But when he drank more than he intended, it became clear he wasn't used to drinking so much. As the night wound down, the team began helping the tipsy colleagues into taxis. Amara, holding her small clutch and finishing her water, heard someone call her name. "Amara, you're taking CEO Kang home, right?" She blinked in surprise. "Me?" The driver handed her the keys. "He requested you specifically, said he trusts you." Her heart skipped with surprise, but she quickly nodded. "All right, I'll take him." The drive to his place was silent at first. CEO Kang sat in the passenger seat, his eyes half closed, his tie loose, his hair slightly messy. The city lights shone through his window. When they arrived, Amara helped him gently. "Come on, we're here." He stumbled slightly as they entered his sleek, minimalist apartment. Just as she turned to leave, his hand caught her wrist. "Don't go," he mumbled, pulling her back toward him. His eyes looked tired, but his voice was clear. "I've tried, Amara. I've tried to fight this, but I'm in love with you." She froze completely. "I love how you think. I love how you stand tall even when people try to tear you down. I love everything about you." And then he kissed her. It was soft, hesitant, the kind of kiss that held all the feelings he'd been hiding. But Amara pulled back gently but firmly. "You've had too much to drink," she whispered. "You don't want to regret this tomorrow." "I won't," he said, gripping her hand tightly. "I promise I won't." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, filling the room with warmth. Amara blinked, still drowsy, but felt a strange comfort around her. She shifted slightly and realized CEO Kang's arms were wrapped around her, holding her close. Her heart jumped. She couldn't remember exactly how they'd ended up like this. Had she fallen asleep beside him? She tried to move, but his arms tightened. His voice spoke softly in the quiet room. "Don't leave." Amara froze. Her breathing stopped for a second. She slowly turned her head to look at him. His eyes were clearer now, but they still held the same intensity. "CEO Kang, what about last night?" He stopped her, his voice slightly rough. "It wasn't just the alcohol. I've been trying to hide this for a long time, but last night when I kissed you, I realized I couldn't pretend anymore. I care about you, Amara, more than I should." Amara's heart raced. She'd always felt the pull between them, but hearing him say it made her breathless. She wanted to speak, but the words caught in her throat. "I'm not perfect," he continued, his voice softer now. "I loved June. I was deeply in love with her, but that's in the past. You're different. I don't know what's happening, but I can't keep acting like it's nothing." Amara's chest felt tight, torn between her own feelings and the reality of his past. Still, there was something in his eyes, an honesty she hadn't seen before. "I can't promise this will be easy," he whispered, pulling her closer, "but I want to try with you. Will you be with me, Amara?" Her heart pounded hard, the fear still there, but she knew deep down that she was already falling for him. "Yes," she whispered back, her voice calm and certain. "I'll be with you." CEO Kang kissed her softly, his lips warm and tender against hers. a promise of everything to come. Which moment in the story resonated with you the most? Was it Amara's courageous speech at the summit, or the moment CEO Kang finally confessed his true feelings? Comment below and tell us what part of this story touched your heart the most. We've reached the conclusion of our compelling African-Korean story. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove love can heal the deepest wounds. Share this with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Your support means everything to me.